Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the speaker series, the Thought Leader series that the School of Business introduced earlier this year in 2023. Today, we have Dr. Paul Sabolic, who will explain to us a number of things about business plans. And I think a very interesting lecture that will be for all of us who have entrepreneurial aspirations or even intrapreneurial aspirations. Dr. Sabolic, by the way, brings to the School of Business over 45 years of experience in business and management with multinational corporations and over 30 years of academic and administrative experience in private and public post-secondary institutions. His expertise encompasses marketing, management, economics, media studies, information technology, and education. Dr. Sabolic's consulting practice is aimed at a diverse client base, including New York Stock Exchange companies such as Procter & Gamble, Anheuser-Busch, American Medical International, and Tribune Corporation. Now, without further ado, let us invite Dr. Paul Sabolic.
Thank you, John, very much. It's a pleasure being here with each of you this afternoon, and it's also a very comforting feeling to see familiar faces and names. It allows for a little bit more relaxation and conversation. Hopefully, we will provide you with some information that, number one, you weren't aware of, and or number two, confirms what you already know and can share with everyone else. I've put together a little presentation similar to some of the content that I use in my class in entrepreneurship, and specifically content that I use with clients that are looking to write a business plan or are looking to start up a business. And we detail a lot of that information relative to the content. So hopefully I'll be able to provide you with a little bit of content that may encourage you to do a little more research on your own and basically get a foundational issue with business plans. If I can share the screen a little bit, again, it's better that you look at a screen than look at me because it's kind of sad looking at an old person sometimes. And I'd rather you look at the screen and feel a little more comfortable. So this content, as I said, is part of the entrepreneurship class that I teach and that I have taught for over probably 40 some years. I have been in higher education since 1986, which puts it about 37 years in formalized education. But prior to that, I worked in major corporations and again, dealing with a lot of these issues within certain departments of the larger companies, looking to do expanding into larger markets, expanding new product lines. All of this is fundamental to that process. So getting to the point and getting to the basic content of what we're dealing with today, and there is a lot of debate, and we constantly are confronted by this in regard to a business owner, a startup, who basically says, do I really need a business plan? Do I really need to sit down and memorialize this process? And again, the answer to that is fundamental. The basic answer is it depends. And I can't be any clearer than that, only because it depends on your circumstance as a business owner. As a startup, a lot of individuals will come into a venture with some experience, with some background in the venture. But then again, there are others who are looking to change careers, are looking to do something totally different than what they were doing for the last 10 or 15 years, and wanted to start their own venture in some way, and to basically, as we've learned in our entrepreneurship classes and through experience, individuals that start their business aren't necessarily there to make money. They are there to be independent. They are there to run their own venture. They are there to do their own thing, as as we used to say back in the 1960s. Once you are able to decide on that direction, then it becomes challenging. Then it becomes, well, how do I do what I want to do? And we start looking for answers. We start asking a lot of questions. We try to seek out those individuals who may guide us and who may be more experienced or have some insight into a venture. But again, I never discourage a client or a student who may come to me and basically say, well, do I need a business plan, or should I do one? And again, I give them the answer. Well, it depends. And we sit down and we look at the context of what they're trying to do. And I share basic information. So for example, there's a lot of debate, and students and entrepreneurs will come to me, will say, well, Google never had one, and Facebook never had one, but so why do I need it? And so again, I share this screen, and you could look at just some of the companies that evolved out of a no business plan mindset. And if you look at the older companies, they were all basically pre-World War II fundamental, looking at opportunity to create a product. And back during the production era, post 1900 through the late 20s, companies made products that they figured everybody could need or want, and there was no real challenge. It was based on the Industrial Revolution. They kept making products, and if people bought them, they bought them, and if they didn't, then the company changed course and went and did something else. It was only recently, especially in the 90s, when we started to see the internet and the access to that specific technology, where companies like Google, Yahoo, and Cisco started up based on a basic need. They found a way to create a product that had genuine interest, and they started to do it at the university level. Each of those companies started out that way, Facebook being the other one on the screen, and fundamentally looked at people that might want to do what they're doing. And then later on, they went out for funding, and they went out for to do some planning. And Apple being the outlier here, when Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs got together in 1977, there were no personal computers. They literally created the industry, and they got Markle to support it and get some funding. And as you know, the rest is history. But they later on created some plans. They had to sit down and guide the company, and they had to document what they were going to do. Now, whether you call it a business plan or you call it strategic planning, again, it's your choice, and it's how you feel that you want to be able to guide your organization. And again, there's no simple answer. When we look at the no or the yes on business plans, a lot of research has been done over the last probably 10 to 15 years, especially the one with Babson College is the one that's cited a lot, where they actually went out and did some research with 116 different businesses. And, they basically found out that, maybe it's not that important to do a business plan. But then again, when you look at the study that came out of the Harvard studies and published in the Business Review, they say that 16% higher likely of success, 16% greater if you did have a documented business plan. So for the sake of our discussion today, we're not going to debate this. We're just going to move forward and talk about, yes, having a business plan. And there is a famous quote about planning, and it's ironic, and everybody that you listen to and in the field of entrepreneurship, they talk about boxer Mike Tyson's famous quote about planning. He said, when you walk into the ring, has a plan on how they're going to conduct the bout until they get punched in the face, and that changes everything. So in business, entrepreneurs are going to get punched in the face. They're going to get a rude awakening, in a sense that maybe this wasn't all what I expected it to be. Maybe I should have done a lot of different things. But the outcome to that is that plans are modified. Plans are changed. They're not cast in stone. And that's what I talk to my clients about on every occasion that I can. It's, don't write this in concrete so that you can't fix it or change it should circumstances change. Should you do get punched in the face and the market changes and conditions change and there's a pandemic, those kinds of things happen. And so in all of the examples that we could use, uh, businesses are affected by a lot of external factors, and I'm not going to sit here and expound on those. You all are aware of what we just went through over the last couple of years. You all know the impact on businesses, especially mom and pop businesses. Those who were not considered essential suffered and still suffer to this day. So no matter how much planning they had done, how much business planning they did, how much documentation that was done, circumstances change. And so we need to be a little more flexible. But moving forward, I wanted to talk about a few elements of the business planning process that I figure in most of my experiences were essential. And I'll share with you a little bit of what the textbook shows. And this is a textbook I use in the entrepreneurship class. And in a chapter, they talk about the elements of the business plan. And you can see here that this is just one page that shows you 4 basic sections or elements. And then the next section, they give you a bunch more for a total of 11 sections of a business plan. And students will look at me after looking at this in the textbook. They go, do I need to do all of those? And of course, my answer is depends. And it depends on what you want to be able to do in your business, how detailed you want it to be, how fundamental you want the plan to be, and then move forward accordingly. So this is the supreme example, the extreme example, if you like. And again, as several of you know, textbook authors are very thorough in what they try to document, and they want to make sure they dot the I's, cross the T's, and they don't leave anything out. So this is Professor Hisrich's example of the elements of a business plan. The more popular one is Business Plan Pro, which is a software that was developed back in the early 90s out of Palo Alto Software. And as you can see here, the 7 key elements of the business plan are identified. And then, of course, there are subparts to each of these. And again, it depends on how much detail you feel compelled to include and how relevant those different elements are, and are they compelling enough for what purpose your plan is. And again, there's a lot of discussion as to whether or not the plan is actually a roadmap. Do I need this thing to guide me to step 1, 2, 3, and 4? Or am I going to use this plan strictly for investment and for investors? And what is it that they want to see? So as I developed my plans over the years, and I was writing business plans prior to the software, so you can imagine the amount of time it took to create the template. Even prior to computers back in the early 80s, when we were writing these plans for companies, we used typewriters. We used electric typewriters, and there was no real formalized template. And we created it and made it up as we went. And it wasn't until, again, computers became a functional element within industry. And after Apple came out back in '84 with the Macintosh, where it became user friendly, and we started to be able to get access to those different software programs. And this is again in the early 90s when Business Plan Pro came out. It made my job a lot easier writing business plans for clients. Again, to this day, when a client approaches me for writing a business plan, I'm very candid and very honest. And I say, well, you can do it yourself, and here's how. I share the software with them, and I show them the tutorial within Business Plan Pro. It literally walks the customer, the client, the startup person through the business plan writing process. But the key to all of this, of course, is actually getting the data, getting the information, collecting it, collating it, and then entering it into the document. So the most time-consuming part of all of this is gathering the data and making it relevant to the business venture. So again, as we look back, we see that the textbook author gives us 11 sections. Business Plan Pro software roughly gives us 7. If you were to screen the hundreds of business plans that are included in the software, most of them have 7 sections with an appendice. I said, well, I don't know if we need all of those, and I'm going to share with you my model for a business plan, and these are the 4 key elements that I talk about with clients, and these are the 4 key elements that I think are relevant to any venture, and if done correctly and done with commitment, you will have all of the information you need. Number one, for this roadmap that many people talk about, and of course, the proof that you need to demonstrate to an investor how you are going to make money and how you're going to proceed. There's a lot of debate as to the most important sections, and I always refer to Bill Gross. For those of you that don't know Bill Gross, he started Idea Lab in Pasadena, and several years back, and going on 20 years now, and he used the incubator model and was able to invest in about 125 different companies, and Bill Gross talks about some of these elements, and he basically feels that the business model isn't the key or the most important thing. His whole approach to business is timing, and it doesn't matter what you're going to do as long as the market timing is correct. And there are dozens of examples of market timing, and one of his favorite is the whole context of Uber and looking at all of those kinds of self-developed business opportunities where people were using their own personal possessions or their facilities, their house, their cars, to make money, to basically offer those services and at making extra money. And he said this came out of the last recession, the post 2008, 2009 period, where you get all of these different companies that started up with this basic approach. And again, he said timing is the most important. I take some exception with Bill Gross, although I haven't started up 125 companies, but yet in my world, in my universe, we found that the business model was essential, and that those clients that I had that were looking for funding had to demonstrate how they were going to make money and how they were going to return to the investor that profit and that investment, basically the whole package. And so again, what's the business model all about? It demonstrates to a client, to an investor, to whomever is interested, your parents or your grandparents, whomever will invest in your venture. And as many of us know, financial institution or angel investors, or for that matter, Shark Tank investors, aren't going to invest in startup. You've got to come up with your own startup money. And that is a very difficult challenge for most small business owners. And it takes a tremendous effort to fund the venture, to start the venture, and then, of course, to continue to generate revenues to provide a profit. But the business model, in my example, has to show the money-making opportunity, and to a real investor how you're going to get your money back. And it can't be arbitrary. When you ask a lot of small investors, and they always say, well, no one's been able to tell me how they're going to make money. They forecast numbers. They explain how their numbers were created to a certain point, but there's no validation that those numbers are realistic. That's why most of these business plans are all, quote, pro forma, and where they're just forecasting information and not necessarily the real hardcore number that they need to promote the venture to investors, and have the investors feel comfortable and confident that what they're explaining and what they're offering is valid. So I create a scenario model and I develop it on a best case, worst case scenario, and then we get into the various market conditions that will be realistic, that the investor and or the entrepreneur can expect, and what they're really going to face. Again, you can plan all you want, but if your plans aren't flexible and edited, you will hit walls and you will hit barricades, and sometimes you're not going to be able to recover. But if you make the plan a quote work in progress, it gives some confidence to an investor that what you're offering is viable. So we look at the worst case, best case scenario, and I create this. And again, I don't know if you can see this, it's a little small print, but I literally determine what it's going to take. And this is from a real client where I forecasted a direct sales opportunity where they were going to be offering a cookie-like product and a confectionery product. And I did this with several of my companies over the years, where we were able to make X number of sales calls. We were able to make X number of sales or placements, as we call them, based on a promotion, based on free product. As many of you know, when you go to Costco, you get free samples. Costco is known for that. When you can walk around the store 3 times and have lunch. But what they try to get you to do is to like the product and then buy it. We obviously do the same kind of thing when we set up these different scenarios. We try to offer free samples. We try to offer free product for a placement opportunity to see if the product will sell. So in this example, scenario 1 is called best case. I then create worst case and then a most probable based on a statistical model that I've developed with a percentage of retention of product over a period of time. And what this is able to do, and again, it is not arbitrary. It is a realistic approach to actually demonstrating true sales revenues and then looking to create a operating budget from that. And we're able to then create a spreadsheet. And again, this is probably very hard to see because it's small print, but we do this over 36 months, and this is just the first example of the first 12 periods, if you like. And we're able to take that scenario process and then create these real numbers. And again, when someone says, well, how are you going to get X number of placements or X number of sales? We say we actually revert back to our scenario. We've got one full-time salesperson making 10 sales calls a day based upon the promotional opportunity. They should have a 30% closing ratio. And we forecast that, again, based upon our determination of costs and then, of course, the revenues. So from this model where we created this Excel spreadsheet, and again, Excel, in the old days, we had to do this manually. There was no Excel. So we had to extrapolate all the numbers manually and put it down so that it was a true representation. But Excel gives you this opportunity now. And what used to take us days to do, this can now be done, in a bunch of minutes, where you can create the formulas and create the macros and just change 1 or 2 numbers, and you've got a whole new spreadsheet. We then take these numbers, and of course, we then create an operating budget, forecasting what we expect our expenses to be relative to the venture. And in this example, I had a client that was producing peanut butter cookies that were infused with peanut butter, like a jelly donut. And they were injecting peanut butter, real peanut butter, into this cookie dough. And it was there were no products like that at the time I was doing this. There were similar products like Powerade bars and Nutri-Grain bars that were peanut butter flavored, but this client wanted to create this product where it was injected with real peanut butter, and it was similar to an Almond Joy or Mounds bars. There were 2 cookies in a package, and As you can see here, the real downside to this business and this venture, because it was created out of a boutique bakery, which means they don't have the potential to do really high volume production, but do a couple of thousand units rather than several 100,000 units at a time. So his cost of goods were 50% of what his revenues were. And when I shared this with a client, he had a heart attack in year one and then had a stroke in year two, and saw that he wasn't going to make money until year three. But that was based upon the one salesperson doing all these things and maintaining a high level of operating costs. Which again, when we look at this scenario, and what's interesting is when we survey startups, for those that succeed, they get to a break even between 18 months and 3 years. That's why a lot of financial institutions, banks, and lending organizations, they don't want to talk to you unless you have 3 years of operating experience and 3 years of operating expenses and revenues. So again, it's interesting how we forecast this, and the break even comes in year three based on the scenario that was designed, again, with the flexibility of changing it. If we had two salespeople, if we then, like with this client, we went and I had several contacts in the baking industry, and I had a contact at two chefs down in Torrance. Two chefs produces products for Costco, and they make hundreds of thousands of units at a time. And they were willing to free up some space for my client, and they told him that he would need to guarantee 1 million units a year. And he kind of went off the deep end with that one, and we didn't do it. He just backed off and realized that the commitment to grow this business was more than he was willing to risk at the time. But again, we created the model. If we were able to get our costs to produce, our cost of goods down to a reasonable operating number, he might have been successful. We had done several vendor shows in Las Vegas. People liked his product. They liked the fact that it was a unique product and was different than most of the peanut butter products that were out there at the time. And the sad part of this, when we were creating the business plan, he was this client was a poker player. He made all of his money playing poker in the various poker parlors in Southern California. And he said, "I've always wanted to do this business." And I said, "Well, what do you know about the peanut butter business?" And he says, I don't know anything about the peanut butter business." He says, "I like peanut butter." And I said, "Oh, so you're starting your business because you like peanut butter?" He goes, "Well, yeah, you know." And he says, "Other people like peanut butter." My next question was, "Well, how many people out there like peanut butter?" And he goes, "I don't know, but I do. And I'm gonna make this." And so he goes back to that production era back after 1900, where they were making products that they were hoping people were going to buy. And again, he based his forecasting, personal forecasting, on hope rather than the real numbers. And when I showed him the real numbers, he was stunned and not real happy about that. But again, my job is as a consultant is not to necessarily make clients happy, but to make them aware of the risks and the opportunities that are out there as I perceive them, as I see them. And again, I'm just one of many I hope my clients consult with to get some idea of what it is they want to do. But the bottom line is this is the business model forecasting. And again, this next section is marketing, and I come from a marketing background. My whole experience based is marketing. It's when I looked at graduate programs and getting my doctorate, I didn't want to get a doctorate in marketing because I knew I could have taught the classes and it would have been redundant. So I wanted to gain some knowledge in areas that I had none, and I picked computer and information technology because I felt I could learn more and it could benefit my business, and it did, regarding database management and networks. So I didn't get a marketing degree in my doctorate, but in my undergraduate, I did my research for my MBA in marketing, and my research project dealt with research and surveying the Purchasing Management Association of Southern California. I did a pilot study on data and what they were using for product development. But anyway, marketing is the basis of just about everything. You need to identify who your customers are, where they are, how many of them are out there willing and able to buy your product at the price you want to sell it. And then I always say, then make that many plus one. The one you put in the museum, as you know, most companies that have their prize product, they have a museum created for that. We were taking my daughter up to Fresno State, and she was visiting various colleges before we chose Woodbury. But we stopped at the Raisin Museum outside of Fresno. Even the raisin industry has a museum. So every company has some form of product display of what they did with it and how they were able to grow the business. But marketing is the bottom line. You've got to be able to have customers, and without customers, you have no business. And I constantly harp on that with my students as well as my clients. I use an example in my class. There was a product that came to me called the golf tee setter, and for those of you that have seen me walk around campus with it, it looks like just a kind of crazy device. And this person that invented it had this product and called me up. We had met for lunch, and this product was like a centerpiece on the table. And he says, "Isn't this the most beautiful thing you've seen?" And I go, "Well, not really, but tell me about it." And he said, "Well, it's a golf tee setter. It tees up golf balls." And I said, "Well, who are your customers? How would you define your customers?" He said, "Well, golfers with bad backs." And I said, "Golfers with bad backs?" I said, "Well, if you have a bad back, why are you playing golf at all?" He goes, "Well, I have a bad back, and I use it to tee up my golf balls, and there are other people that are like that." I said, "Well, then how many people out there are golfers with bad backs?" He goes, "I don't know, but I have one." And so again, people make products for themselves, and then he wanted a business plan, but it was already too late because he created the product prior to doing the necessary research to determine the market viability. And I was kind of cryptic with him and kind of caustic because he was pretty rude. And I asked him how much it cost him to develop the product, and he produced like 1,000 units of this thing. And he told me how much it cost, and I said, "Well, if you had told me this prior to making it, I could have saved you half of that money." And he goes, "What do you mean you could have saved me half the money? How would you have done that?" I said, "Well, I would have charged you half and told you not to do it." And he, of course, didn't like that. But again, it was too late. He had already made the product, and it was too late for a marketing plan or for a sales plan or a business plan, but he needed a sales plan in lieu of that. So again, when we look at the elements of the plan relative to the business plan, it is a key component. It's a key element that I feel that is totally essential. And then, of course, all of you, if not all of you, most of you are familiar with the financial elements. And again, the startup plan, the profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow, they're obviously essential. Those are the fundamental documents that you require, whether you put them in the financial section or you put them in appendices, but they all need to be explained. They all need to be demonstrated as to how you came up with the numbers, how they're going to show the break even, and how they're going to be part of the overall plan to make your business successful. Again, this is pretty straightforward. There's no secret here. It just pretty much tells what's necessary for the financial elements. And then, of course, the operational plan, the third part of this thing, or if you like, the fourth part, if we include the business model. And of course, I say that this is the who, what, where, when, why, how. All of these things need to be addressed in that section. How you're going to design the business, who's going to be doing whatever, how are you going to measure your success, what is it that you will fundamentally get out of the venture, and the bottom line is, where do you go next? It's always the three strategic questions, and I leave my clients and even my students there ad nauseum. They hear this from me. Where are you now? Where do you need to go? And how do you plan to get there? So this operational plan element poses that last part. Here we know where we are, we know what we've been doing, but here's where we want to go and how we're going to get there in the next step, whether it be the next level, whether it be the next opportunity, but it's part of this section of the plan. And then, of course, whatever you want to put in the appendices, if you do want to use the financial statements in the appendix or other miscellaneous documents, there's certain clients have various supporting documents based upon their resume, their experience, and they include all of that stuff in the overall content of the plan itself. But in a nutshell, those are the basic elements of the business plan that I recommend to clients. Those 4 basic ones there, I call them the key elements. We don't use 11, we don't use 7, we use 4, and then we of course may have some subsections within that, but within those 4 content areas, you should be able to demonstrate how you will succeed and how you're going to move forward with your venture. And that's basically what I have today, Joan. I don't know if there's more you want me to talk about. I'd be glad. I could tell a lot of stories, but I don't know if everybody wants to hear my stories. Students are tired of hearing my stories over time, but
No, we actually think that you had some really hilarious statements in there by saying the truth to your clients too. And if there's one lesson that I learned from it, is that maybe more often than we think, people want to go the entrepreneurial route based on what they like or what they feel, and not necessarily what the world may need.
Exactly, and that's the fundamental lesson. Years ago, Jobs and Wozniak could do it because they came up with a machine that they thought they could like, and that technology was moving forward, and they hung around groups of techies like themselves, and they were able to demonstrate a need. But you could look back on other kinds of ventures, and the timing was there. It was just the timing was right. And entrepreneurs, again, in our surveys, when we do it in the class, entrepreneurs would rather be lucky than good. Mm-hmm. They want the planets lined up, and they would prefer that over everything else. And enough can't be said about passion. Individuals who go into their venture, and I've had unfortunately several clients who sacrificed their homes, their families, to do what they wanted to do, and unfortunately didn't succeed, and ended up in divorce and ended up losing everything. But again, entrepreneurs do many different ventures. They're always constantly looking for different opportunities. So, but again, as far as the business plan is concerned, I advise a client to do it, at least with those 4 sections.
Fantastic. Are there any questions amongst our audience?
I couldn't be that thorough.
Sharon, yes, please.
Will you share your slides?
Yes, I will be happy. I will be happy to give them to Joan, and she could send them out to all of you.
Yeah, they're really terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Very clear. Very clear. Before, I don't want to, take over this whole conversation. So let me first hear if other people have questions. Any other questions?
Just a comment that I really enjoyed, Paul. Your very humorous, witty, profound wisdom. I really loved the comment that, you said, if you listen to me, then you can save half of your money and not do it.
Wow. That's as candid as I could get with clients, and they don't like to hear that. So
I think sometimes that is the best advice, not doing it is the best advice sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Sharon asked if you got the peanut butter recipe, Paul. No, you didn't get the peanut butter recipe?
Adam has a question.
Oh yeah, Adam has a question. So let's see
Paul.
what
hey, Adam.
Yeah. So yeah, thanks for the presentation. Good to see you. I had a question about, it seems like a lot of the numbers that go into so many business plans are just wild guesses.
Yes.
Right. So you're like, okay, well, if I sell, 1 million cookies, then I'll have a successful business, right? But how do you know, like, what's your sort of experience with, is it judging the market? Is estimating, how many people are going to buy something? Do you have any particular tools or tricks that you've used in the past for getting a more accurate guesses in terms of what you think, the market's how it's gonna respond to whatever the proposal is?
Well, basically, as I said earlier, on creating the plan, it depends on the approach, and the same holds true with forecasting potential sales or using different kinds of models that might forecast the potential market or the size of the market. Frankly, I use the Pareto principle a lot, the 80-20 rule. I take into account what the basic size of the market is. We extrapolate a lot of the basic population, and then we look at the industry specific data that we're collecting to see how viable the 80-20 rule would apply. And I've used it probably my whole career. And, sometimes it doesn't work out to be 80-20, it works out to be 75-25, but it comes within plus or minus, say, 5 to 8%. And Pareto has been pretty accurate. And I think I'm not the first one to say that. But then there are other models that we have built into different industries. For example, my background was consumer products with Procter & Gamble and Anheuser-Busch and AMI and Tribune. And we look at those different industries and we try to determine, based upon past experience, where certain markets are. But again, conditions change. There's nothing that's similar today than it was even 5 years ago. COVID changed everything, and so we need to then go back to square one sometimes and redesign those models that will pretty much give us some confidence that the market exists and that our product has viability. And again, there are some guesstimates that go into it, but I try to do as best guesstimate as possible with the material and statistically using that approach. And sometimes it works, and then of course there have been abject failures, and I take responsibility for that, because again, we're trying to determine what market conditions are going to be 1 year, 3 years, and 5 years down the road, and sometimes it just doesn't work out that way.
Yeah. Thanks.
Sure. I think, Adam, you've seen my golf tee setter in my
Yes,
my
yes, I
office.
have. I don't think I ever heard the story though, so thanks.
Oh yeah, well, it's a true story. I students look at me sometimes, they go, how'd you, that's not true, you made that up. I go, how do you make that up? You can't
Yeah.
make up, that's even a Hollywood script wouldn't come up with that. So
Yeah.
any other questions? Okay, Joan, it's all yours.
Well, I know I do have a question. I wanted to know actually, if you say that the people who come up with a business plan overall have a bigger chance of success, is that because financial institutions that have to, of course, give out the loans consider these people better prepared, even though it is some guessing work that is included in a business plan, but because the bank or any financial institution sees that this person has at least invested some time and effort in this project, what is the reason that somebody, in your opinion, that somebody with a business plan has a better chance of succeeding as opposed to one who doesn't?
Well, again, that's a very difficult question, Joan, because again, circumstances being what they are, you can't arbitrarily say that, this person will be successful and this person won't. This person has a mustache, so I like mustaches, and I'm gonna lend to them, and I'm not gonna lend to somebody that doesn't have a mustache. There are a lot of arbitrary conditions that enter into that decision, and a lot of times I've had a client that went in for some funding after about 5 years, and they were trying to expand, and it was a restaurant, and they were going to franchise, and they had 4 locations, and they wanted to franchise, and we went into the venture and to the lending agency, and at the end of the meeting, the guy goes, I really like you, and I think you're going to do well. How do you measure that? How do you measure, well, I like you, and I think you're going to do well?
Mm-hmm.
I was shocked. I go, oh, wow, hopefully somebody likes me someday and is willing to lend to me. But, again, that was just, one circumstance. And most of the time, the numbers have to demonstrate a path of success. They have to be, like I laid out that scenario. If you do this, the end result will be that. Again, cause and effect. It just can't be, I pulled the numbers out of the sky, I pulled the numbers out of my pocket, and it's, again, an arbitrary process. It has to have substance. It has to come from some technical process, not a theoretical, not a spiritual place. It has to be somewhat realistic, and it has to show, even when it is realistic and it really is direct. I've had clients turn down for funding. But again, I wish I had the crystal ball when I walked in with a client. I wish I could say, well, I know, Joe, you're going to do fine. They're going to give you the funding and you're going to be able to grow to the next level. But I just don't have that. And if I did, I'd be sitting on the mountaintop and all of you would be coming to kiss my ring. But I don't have that vision, and unfortunately, and I just try to do the best I can with the information that they give me.
And I know we need to close soon, but one last question from my end, at least. Over the many years that you have experienced and given advice, is there any particular industry or type of business that you consider riskier? Not, of course, to discourage anybody from doing that, but over time, which type of business have you seen fail most versus succeed most? Or is that an impossible question? Is it
Restaurants and cocktail lounges?
That's what I was afraid of. What are those? More
Well,
fail?
everybody thinks that they can start a restaurant because they eat.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
And everybody thinks they could run a bar and because they drink, or they party and they figure that it's a viable. I mean, I can't tell you how many students. And one of the things that I offer is a sample business plan for a cocktail lounge. So and many students say, well, I want to open up a bar, I want to open up a lounge, and I go, okay, well, let's start with this and see where you go with it. And but I can almost tell you that those are two businesses that have a high failure rate.
High failure rate. That's what I thought. Yeah.
Sadly.
Yeah. But it makes a lot of sense. It's probably also the type of business that most people gravitate to.
Well, again, because they eat, they think they can run a restaurant, and because they drink, they think they can run a lounge. So.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Sabolic, for this wonderful lecture and, the information that you shared with all of us, because there is so much, several of us are from the business background and so, but these meticulous pieces of information on the business plan, and especially also the anecdotal information that you infused in between, is priceless. And
I got many stories. I mean, it just depends how much time you have. So
yeah, well, I would say based on your experience. Well, if there are no other questions, we're at 4:54 anyway. I saw some really good responses here. Galina Kraus said that it was very nostalgic to hear you speak again, because she took your marketing course in 2007, 2008.
Right. Thank you, Galina. Thanks for remembering.
And Aliana Castro, a current student, says that, she considered this presentation incredibly informing and helpful. So you had quite some good responses here in the chat box, as you can probably see. Thank you again. And audience, ladies and gentlemen, esteemed audience members, thank you for listening to this. We will make sure that this presentation becomes available on YouTube for further references if people want to see it.
And Joan, I'll send you the PowerPoints and you can send them out to anybody who wants them.
And I can share. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you all for being here. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Bye.